Ladies, let's start with a truth that might be hard to accept, but it's one you need to hear. Some men will walk into your life with all the right words. They'll make you feel special, needed, maybe even irreplaceable. And then, little by little, they will take your energy, your kindness, your effort, draining you while giving just enough to keep you holding on. I know how easy it is to ignore red flags, to convince yourself that if you love him harder, if you wait a little longer, he'll finally show up for you. But love isn't supposed to feel like a test. A man who values you will make it clear. A man who is using you will keep you in a cycle of confusion, feeding you hope, but never real commitment. Here's what you need to know. This video will expose 7 behaviors that reveal when a man is using you. More importantly, I'll show you how to break free, using Stoic principles to reclaim your power, self-worth, and inner peace. If this resonates, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now, let's dive into behavior number 1, the biggest warning sign that you might be giving your love to the wrong man. Pay close attention. 1. He only invests when it benefits him. A man's love is measured not by words, but by consistent action. A man who is using you will only invest when it serves his interests. At first, he may seem incredibly attentive. When he needs something, whether it's emotional support, validation, financial help, or intimacy, he suddenly becomes the most charming version of himself. But when you need him, he's nowhere to be found. Too busy, too distracted, too unavailable. His effort is transactional. It's not about connection, it's about control. He gives when he knows there's a return. If there's nothing to gain, there's nothing to give. I met him when I was ready for something real. At first, he was attentive and romantic, everything I thought I wanted. He made me feel like the only woman in the world. He planned dates, surprised me with thoughtful gestures, and always seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I told myself, this is different, this is real. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things changed. The thoughtful texts became sporadic. The deep conversations turned into surface-level small talk. He would only make plans when it was convenient for him. When I suggested something, he always had an excuse. When I needed support, he was suddenly overwhelmed with work or dealing with personal things. But when he needed comfort, validation, or a listening ear, he expected me to be there, without question. If I ever hesitated, he would remind me of all the times he had been there for me in the past, as if his past kindness had been a deposit, and I now owed him in return. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to see the pattern. He was always present when it benefited him. If I was sad, he'd hold me, but only if he wasn't too tired. If I needed reassurance, he'd give it, but only if it didn't interfere with his plans. If I wanted a real, deep connection, he'd offer just enough attention to keep me hoping, but never enough to make me feel secure. This is not love. This is a calculated game. A man like this knows exactly what he's doing. His affection is not an act of love, it is a tool of control. He keeps you tethered by making sure you feel just close enough to something real, but never actually allowing you to have it. He doesn't invest in you, he manages you. It's a painful realization, and I know how hard it is to accept. But if you're constantly questioning where you stand, constantly waiting for him to show up for you the way you do for him, then the answer is already clear. A man who truly values you does not make his effort conditional. A man who truly cares about you will be consistent, not convenient. A man like this thrives on intermittent reinforcement, a psychological tactic that creates addiction. It's the same method used in gambling. The unpredictability of his love makes you crave it more. The moments of warmth, the occasional attention, the fleeting intimacy, they serve as just enough of a reward to keep you hoping for more. But the cycle never changes. He will always pull away when he has what he wants. He will always keep you waiting for something that will never come. I spent months trying to convince myself that if I was patient, if I gave him time, he would eventually meet me where I was. But love is not a waiting game. Love is not supposed to feel like you're constantly auditioning for a role that he refuses to cast. And one day I stopped. I stopped making excuses for his inconsistency. I stopped rationalizing his emotional distance. I stopped investing in someone who only showed up when it was beneficial for him. If this sounds familiar, it's time to reassess. Ask yourself, Is he showing up because he truly cares, or because it serves him in the moment? If his love is conditional, so should be your presence in his life. You are not a backup plan. You are not an option. And you are certainly not an emotional investment he can withdraw from whenever he pleases. Walk away before you find yourself completely emptied, waiting for a love that was never real to begin with, because the next behavior is just as damaging. He makes you feel guilty for having standards. 2. He makes you feel guilty for having standards. I remember the exact moment. I told him he needed to work harder, be more consistent. I wasn't asking for grand gestures, just simple things: communication, reliability, presence. And his response? A sigh, followed by, "I guess I'm not good enough for you." It hit me like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. No longer was it about my needs, but about his feelings of inadequacy. And in that moment, I felt guilty. Maybe I was asking for too much. Maybe I was being unreasonable. Maybe, if I just let things flow, he would show up the way I needed him to. This is a classic manipulation tactic. When a man makes you feel guilty for expecting the bare minimum, he isn't trying to meet you halfway. He's trying to wear you down. He's making you believe that your standards are unreasonable, when in reality, they are the foundation of self-respect. At first, it's subtle. You say you need consistency, he says he's just not good at texting. You want commitment, he tells you he's not ready for labels. You ask for basic emotional support, and suddenly, you're too demanding. And little by little, without even realizing it, you start lowering the bar. You start making excuses for his lack of effort. And before you know it, you're accepting the bare minimum while still giving him everything. This is not love. This is emotional manipulation. This is called reframing the narrative, a technique used to shift the focus from his shortcomings to your supposed unfair expectations. Instead of taking accountability, he makes it about you being too much. It's a psychological trick designed to make you question yourself, to keep you second-guessing whether you're the problem. The goal, to exhaust you into accepting less than what you deserve. It's a power play. If he convinces you that your expectations are unrealistic, he never has to change. He never has to meet your standards because he's already made you feel like having them is wrong. Demanding respect is not asking for too much. It is asking for exactly what you deserve. A man who truly values you will not make you feel guilty for wanting effort. He will not make you question whether you're being unreasonable for expecting communication, consistency, and respect. Because to a man who genuinely loves you, those things are not requests. They are the bare minimum. If every time you express your needs, he flips it back on you, pay attention. That's not miscommunication. That's a deliberate avoidance of accountability. You don't need to convince a man why you deserve to be treated well. A man who respects you will already understand that. The right man will rise to meet your standards. The wrong man will try to convince you to lower them. Choose wisely. I spent months convincing myself that maybe if I just gave him more time, if I was more patient, he would step up. But love is not about waiting for someone to decide if you are worthy of effort. Love is about being with someone who sees your worth from the start. And if this sounds familiar, it's time to ask yourself, am I truly being valued, or am I just being tolerated? Because the next behavior is just as toxic. He keeps you guessing about where you stand. 3. He keeps you guessing about where you stand. You know the feeling. One day he's affectionate, making plans for the future, calling you his everything. The next he's distant and cold, acting as if you're too much for wanting consistency. One moment he pulls you in, making you feel irreplaceable. The next he withdraws, leaving you questioning whether you imagine the connection altogether. This isn't love. This is emotional manipulation. A man who values you will make your place in his life clear. There will be no mixed signals, no second guessing, no moments of doubt where you feel like you're walking on eggshells. But a man who is using you, he thrives on emotional ambiguity. He keeps things just uncertain enough to keep you hooked. At first it feels intoxicating. You tell yourself this is just how relationships work, nothing is perfect. And every time he pulls away, you hold on tighter. When he finally gives you attention again, it feels like a reward. The relief washes over you, confirming that you didn't imagine it. He does care, doesn't he? This is intermittent reinforcement. a powerful psychological tool used to keep people addicted to toxic dynamics. The unpredictability of his affection makes it even more desirable. Just like a gambler addicted to the rare payout of a slot machine, you cling to those brief moments of warmth, convincing yourself they mean more than they do. He knows what he's doing. He keeps the relationship undefined so that you will continue to prove your worth, always chasing the version of him that once made you feel special. And the worst part? He knows you'll stay. It starts small. He texts you constantly, then suddenly goes silent for a day or two. You bring it up, and he dismisses your concerns. Relax, you're overthinking it. You make plans together, but when the day comes, he cancels last minute. Something urgent just came up. He acts jealous when you spend time with other people, but refuses to commit when you bring up exclusivity. Every time you ask where this is going, he dodges the question. Or worse, he makes you feel like you're being too pushy, and so you stop asking. You tell yourself he just needs time, he's been hurt before, and he'll commit when he's ready. You don't realize it yet, but you are training yourself to accept breadcrumbs. This is not patience, this is self-betrayal. A man who truly loves you won't need time to decide if you're worth it. He won't keep you in a cycle of highs and lows, rewarding you just enough to keep you from walking away. If he wanted to be with you, he would make it clear. If he truly cared, he wouldn't put you in a position where you have to question your own worth. Do not waste your time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. A man who plays with your emotions, who keeps you second-guessing, who makes you feel insecure about where you stand, he is not a good man. He is not someone worthy of your love, your energy, your presence. If you recognize this pattern, it's time to step back and see the situation for what it is. Stop making excuses for his inconsistency. Stop convincing yourself that his rare moments of affection outweigh the confusion he leaves in his wake. Pay attention to his patterns, not his words. A man who genuinely values you will be consistent. You won't have to ask where you stand, because his actions will tell you loud and clear. If he is making you doubt your place in his life, then your place is nowhere at all. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, then ask yourself, are you in love with him, or are you in love with the idea of what he could be? Because the next behavior is just as dangerous. He doesn't integrate you into his life. 4. He doesn't integrate you into his life. At first, everything felt right. The chemistry, the late-night conversations, the way he looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. But over time, something felt off. No matter how much time we spent together, I still felt like an outsider looking in. I wasn't part of his world. Not really. He never introduced me to his close friends. He never mentioned me to his family. If I asked about meeting them, he would shrug it off with, I don't like mixing my personal life with relationships. If I suggested going to an event together, he'd hesitate, always having an excuse ready, it's just not the right time, or it's complicated. And yet, I convinced myself that maybe he was just a private person, that maybe, in time, he would bring me into his world. But the truth? He had no intention of doing that. A man who is serious about you will want to integrate you into his life. He will introduce you to the people who matter. He will invite you to share in his experiences, his routines, and his milestones. You won't have to wonder whether you're part of his future. He will make it clear. But a man who is using you, he will keep you separate. Like a secret, like an afterthought, like someone whose presence in his life is temporary. It starts subtly. You notice that every time you're together, it's in his space, on his terms. He rarely, if ever, invites you into his social life. You don't meet his friends unless by accident. If you bring it up, he deflects. Babe, why does that matter? We know what we have. And for a while you accept it. You tell yourself that labels don't define love and that relationships don't need to be public to be real. But here's the hard truth. If a man truly values you, he won't want to keep you in the shadows. This is a control tactic. By keeping you separate, he ensures that you stay dependent on him alone. You don't have access to the other people in his life, which means you don't have external validation of your place in his world. It keeps you emotionally vulnerable, always hoping for the day when he finally lets you in. But that day never comes. And let's be honest, if he were truly invested, why would he hesitate to show you off. A man who genuinely loves and respects you will want to introduce you to the people who matter to him. He will proudly claim you as his partner. He won't keep you hidden in the shadows, only to be acknowledged when it suits him. If something is truly valuable, it is not hidden away. It is honored, protected, and shown with pride. Think about it. Does he make time for his friends, his coworkers, his hobbies? But somehow, integrating you into his life feels like an inconvenience? Does he always have an excuse when you suggest meeting his family? Have you found yourself justifying why, after months or even years, you're still a mystery to the people around you? You deserve more than whispers behind closed doors. You deserve more than being an afterthought in someone else's life. A man who truly cares about you will not hesitate to bring you into his world. You will meet his friends. His family will know about you. He will include you in his decisions, his future plans, and his everyday life. He won't just call you his partner, he will treat you like one. So if you find yourself questioning why you always feel excluded, why you're always waiting for the moment when he finally lets you in, ask yourself this: am I in a real relationship, or am I just an option? And if the answer isn't clear, then it's already clear. Because the next behavior is just as telling. He talks about the future, but never acts on it. 5. He talks about the future, but never acts on it. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. A man who truly wants a future with you will not just talk about it, he will build it with you. Words mean nothing without action. Dreams, plans, promises, they all sound beautiful. But without effort, they are nothing more than illusions, designed to keep you invested in a future that will never arrive. At first, his words feel reassuring. He paints vivid pictures of the life you'll share together. One day, we'll move in together. I can't wait to take you to Paris. I see you as the mother of my children. It feels like security, like proof that he's serious about you. But time passes, and those promises remain just that, promises. He says he wants to travel with you, but when you bring it up, there's always an excuse. He's too busy, not financially ready, or the timing isn't right. Yet somehow, he finds the time and money for things that matter to him. He buys the latest gadgets, goes on spontaneous trips with his friends, and invests in his hobbies. But when it comes to you, everything is always someday. This is future faking, a manipulation tactic used to keep you attached while he avoids commitment. It's a way to secure your loyalty without giving you certainty. It's subtle, and that's what makes it so powerful, because he never outright says no to the future. You're just always in a state of almost. You keep waiting, keep hoping, keep believing that one day he will finally mean what he says. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to walk away, because now you feel emotionally invested in a future that doesn't exist. And deep down, you start to wonder, if he wanted to, wouldn't he have already? A man who truly wants a future with you will not just talk about it, he will take steps toward making it real. He will plan the trip, make the financial sacrifices, and initiate the next steps. He won't leave you guessing, waiting for a future that never comes. If he constantly talks about someday, but his actions don't reflect a real commitment, then it's time to stop listening to his words and start watching his behavior. A man is judged by his actions, not his intentions. Because if his future is always just out of reach, then it was never meant to include you. And if this sounds familiar, the next behavior is even more telling. He avoids emotional or financial responsibility. 6. He avoids emotional or financial responsibility. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling unheard, dismissed, or even blamed for simply expressing how you feel? You tell him you're hurt by something he did, and instead of listening, he sighs and says, "You're overreacting." You try to explain what's bothering you, and he responds with, "Sounds like a problem." It's subtle, but it stings. Because in that moment, what he's really saying is, "I don't care enough to acknowledge your feelings." A man who avoids responsibility will always find a way to make you the problem. He won't apologize. He will deflect, minimize, or turn it around on you. You'll start questioning yourself. Am I really being too sensitive? Was it not that big of a deal? And that's exactly what he wants. This isn't just emotional immaturity. This is emotional evasion. A refusal to engage, to take accountability, to step up as a partner. A man like this expects you to be his emotional rock, his safe space when he needs comfort, his supporter when he feels down. But when you need him, he's too busy, too distracted, too dismissive. And it doesn't stop at emotions. When it comes to financial responsibility, the pattern is the same. He conveniently forgets his wallet. He lets you cover dinner, pick up the tab, handle the bills, because you're just so good at it. He talks about his struggles, how things are tight right now, how he just needs a little support, while somehow still affording the things that matter to him. He benefits from your generosity, but never contributes equally. At first, you don't mind. You tell yourself, I'm just helping. That's what a relationship is about, supporting each other. But over time, you start to notice a pattern. The help only goes one way. When you need something, there's always an excuse, a delay, a reason why he just can't step up right now. A man who values you will not take from you without giving back. He won't drain you emotionally while refusing to hold space for your needs. He won't expect financial favors while dodging his share of the responsibility. You are responsible for your own soul, not for carrying the burdens of others who refuse to carry their own. A true partner understands that relationships are about reciprocity, about showing up, about an effort that is mutual, not one-sided. If every time you bring up your feelings you leave feeling worse, pay attention. If you're the one always giving, always paying, always supporting, while he simply receives, that is not love. That is an imbalance that will drain you. So ask yourself, is he my partner, or am I just carrying him? Because the next behavior will make it even clearer. He ignores your emotional needs. 7. He ignores your emotional needs. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Love is not just about being present, it's about being emotionally present. A relationship is not built on words alone, but on connection, understanding, and support. And yet there are men who will sit right next to you, hear your words, but never truly listen. You tell him you're feeling overwhelmed, that work has been draining, that something has been weighing on you. And instead of asking why, instead of offering comfort, he shrugs and says, that sucks. Anyway, guess what happened to me today? Or worse, you're overthinking it. That's when it hits you. You are alone in this. A man who truly loves you will make space for your emotions. He will hold room for your thoughts, your fears, and your struggles because your well-being matters to him. But a man who only sees you as a convenience will not. He won't engage. He won't validate. He will only tolerate your emotions as long as they don't inconvenience him. At first, you don't want to believe it. You tell yourself, maybe he's just not good at emotions. Maybe I'm expecting too much. But slowly you start to realize he expects you to be his safe space, his comfort, his emotional anchor. But when it comes to you, he is absent, distant, unavailable. This isn't just emotional immaturity, this is emotional neglect. You start to notice a pattern. When he's stressed, he leans on you, expecting your undivided support, your patience, your presence. But when you are struggling, he doesn't engage. He changes the subject. He withdraws. Your emotions become a problem to be avoided rather than a part of the relationship to be nurtured. And the worst part? You start shrinking yourself. You start keeping things to yourself, choosing silence over another moment of feeling unheard. You convince yourself that maybe it's easier this way. Maybe he just isn't wired for deep conversations. And before you know it, you're carrying the weight of the relationship alone. Love is not a one-way street. If a man consistently dismisses your emotions, he is not your partner. He is a taker. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts and the people you share them with. A healthy relationship is built on reciprocity. A man who values you will want to know what's on your mind. He will listen when you speak, engage when you share, and support when you need him most. He won't just be there for the good times. He will show up when things are difficult because that is what love requires. If every time you express your needs, you are met with silence, avoidance, or frustration, pay attention. If he is always present when things are easy, but nowhere to be found when you are struggling, then ask yourself, is he truly a partner, or is he just an observer in my life? Because love is not about being tolerated. It is about being valued, understood, and truly seen. A wise person does not seek love that weakens them. They seek love that strengthens their soul. If you recognize these behaviors, do not ignore them. A man who values you will not keep you waiting, doubting, or questioning your worth. Love should bring clarity, not confusion. It should make you feel secure, not uncertain. A man who truly cares will show it, not through empty promises, but through consistent action. These lessons are not just about relationships. They are about self-respect, emotional awareness, and personal growth. The way you allow others to treat you reflects the standards you hold for yourself. Protect your energy. Set your boundaries. Walk away from situations that drain you. Because when you make space for what you truly deserve, you stop settling for what only keeps you comfortable. If this message resonates with you, take a moment. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell your story. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And above all, choose yourself, always.